So today is the Sunday of Orthodoxy, or the triumph of Orthodoxy. And on this day, we're going to hear a lot about icons. When we get to the reading of the lives of the saints at communion, you'll hear about what happened and where this particular commemoration came from in terms of the historical background to it. So it's the 8th and 9th century. There was a controversy for a period of around about 100 years about the veneration of icons and whether or not that was something that we ought to be doing. Now, the church, prior to that point, had always said, yes, we should venerate icons. But this controversy came up and was very destructive. If you actually go and look at around the world at many churches, you'll find that a lot of the icons now exist only from after that period. Most of the icons, many of the icons before that period were simply destroyed. So this was a very serious, long-running problem in the church. And so today we are commemorating the end of that, which resulted in the declaration that not only is it fitting to venerate icons, but that it is necessary that we admit that we can depict Christ, his mother, and the saints in icons. And we're going to talk about why that is, because the icon issue is the surface level. Under that, there's an underpinning which we need to look at. So we're going to look at that, and we're also going to talk about what that means for us as Christians, especially as we're going through Lent, and what it means also for us as we relate to other people. So the veneration of icons, the problem that occurred there was that, maybe I'm simplifying a little bit, but in this particular controversy, people were saying God is a spirit, completely transcendent, and therefore God cannot be depicted. That was the idea, right? There's some various theories as to why people were believing this, partly from Greek philosophy, where God was entirely transcendent and the body was seen as sinful or something that we should try to escape. Perhaps the influence of Islam, where there was no veneration of images at all, images were not allowed. So there was maybe perhaps a number of influences on this. But at its base was the idea that we cannot depict God. We cannot depict God using paint and wood or other materials. The problem with this is that Christ came in the flesh. He came as a real human being. In today's epistle reading, we heard that Moses and all the greats of the Old Testament, despite having great faith and doing all these wonders and all these kind of things, they were not perfected. They didn't see that because something more was coming, and that they would not be perfected. They would not be perfected until it came, and with us, we would all be perfected then. In the Gospel, we heard about the dialogue between Christ and Nathanael and Philip. And we hear in that dialogue that Christ is basically saying to them, or in the dialogue you hear, that he is the Messiah, he's come, he's the human being, the Messiah that they were expecting, but also that the angels would be ascending and descending on the Son of Man. And the Son of Man was a title was a messianic title, but it also alluded to the second person of God, which even many Jews prior to the coming of Christ believed in this second hypostasis of God. So it was a divine sort of a thing, right? A divine sort of a title. And so we see in that one dialogue that Christ is both, if we look into it, Christ is both human and also God. And this controversy has come up many times over the history of the church. The triumph of Orthodoxy is really the kind of drawing the line under all of these things. Because the tendency has always been to go one way or the other. Christ is human, but not really God. Christ is God, but not really human. Okay? Many of the heresies of the ancient church were of this form, and largely came about because people tried to understand with their mind the mystery of Christ. The mystery of Christ, we can say certain things about Christ, but ultimately at the heart is just a mystery, and we have to bow down before that mystery. We can't somehow discursively figure out Christ. So this tendency to do that, I mean, G.K. Chesterton, an English writer, said, it's what we're supposed to be doing is raising our minds up to the heavens. But some people try to get the heavens and cram them into their heads, and their heads crack, right? This is what has happened repeatedly over the life of the church. So the main point you need to take away from the whole icon story is this, that Jesus Christ is fully God and fully man. He is fully God, fully man. The technical language is two hypostases. They are joined in one person, indivisibly, but without mixing. So what it means is there is one person, Jesus Christ, who is fully God and fully man. Since there is one person, Jesus Christ, who is fully God and fully man, we can depict God, because God is Jesus Christ. He is the image, the express image of God. So not only is it possible, but it's absolutely necessary that we do so in order to proclaim the true humanity, the real humanity of Jesus Christ. Without that, we are diminishing what God has done for us in becoming human and becoming just like us, in every way except sin. I think it was Gregory the theologian said, "What is not assumed cannot be saved." God assumed our flesh in order to save us. So this is the main thing, and this is important, that we acknowledge that Jesus is fully God, but also fully man, and that we can depict him, we can venerate the icons. When we venerate icons, we are not worshipping wood and paint. The honour that goes to the icons is going to the person, or to Christ, to his mother, or to the people who are depicted in that icon. What does this mean for us individually? We, as human beings, are also icons of Christ, or we ought to be. We're made in his image. We're made in the image of God. So we also ought to be icons, living icons. We should be. That means we ought to be imaging Christ in the world. The idea that maybe we can separate, God and Christ as somehow different or something like that. This idea also we have as a very common idea in our modern world. We like to think that somehow we have a soul and we have a body, and that somehow these things can be separated out as if they're different things. That our soul is the real person, and our body is just what we're living in right now until we die. This is actually not the case. The soul is the life of the body. We're an embodied soul. The things that we do in our body, that is our life. That is us. So we can't simply separate out these things. It's not like we have I've heard it described like a force, in the Star Wars, when you see like Obi-Wan Kenobi after he's died and he looks like a ghost, It's not like we have that. That's not, our body's just like the material reflection of the Force ghost. That's not how it works, right? Our body is the life of the body the soul is the life of the body, but what we do in our body, that is us, okay? That means that death, from that you can see that death is a very unnatural state. The human person is supposed to be an ensouled body. Without the body, we are not a human being. It's a very unnatural state, and that is why we must be given new bodies in the resurrection, okay, to become true human beings. But this also means that whatever we do in the body is really, really important, because that is our life. That is what we are doing. It's not some separate thing. It's not some separate real us. What we do in our bodies is us. So it's really important that we pay attention to what we're doing in our bodies. And during Great Lent is a perfect time for us to focus on what we are doing with our bodies. How are we living in the world? To focus a little bit on taming our passions, all the kinds of things that we know we ought to be doing, so that our body becomes a proper image of Christ. What does it mean in that sense? It means that we are acting in the same way that Christ acted in the world. We are trying to act in the same way in the world as he acted. Okay? He says, do the things that I do. Do the things that I do. If you love me, obey my commandments. All those kind of things. He's saying, all these things he's saying all the time, the same type of thing. Do the things that I did. Be like me in the world. Which brings me to the last point. Other people. Other people are also images of God. And so, in some sense, we should be venerating everybody. Everybody is made in the image of God, and we should venerate them. Some people may be less easy to venerate than others. It's more difficult, perhaps, to see Christ in other people. But as Christians, we should be making an effort to see Christ in everyone. No matter how tarnished, no matter how marred that image may be, it's not just something we should be doing, it's something we must be doing. We must be trying to see the image of God in other people and venerating that image. What does it mean? When we're venerating the image of God in other people, that means the way that we act towards them ought to be the way that Christ would act towards those people. We cannot act in a different way than Christ would act to those people and then call ourselves Christians. So as we're going through Lent, I'm going to keep it short, as we're going through Lent, we need to remember that we are also icons of Christ. Well, firstly, Christ is fully God and fully man, that making images of Christ and his saints is something that the church has said is absolutely necessary to proclaim as a thing that we can do for our faith. Right? It makes clear that fundamental point that Jesus really did become a human being. The second thing is that we, as images of Christ, as living icons of Christ, we have to do work on ourselves. We have to conform to his life, and we have to make efforts to do that. And the final point, again, is that towards other people, we need to always remember that those people are also made in the image of God, and that we as Christians, our fundamental duty towards other people is to treat them as Christ would treat them. So as we go through Lent, let's keep those things in mind, and may God help us to do so.
Life-giving cross, unconquerable trophy of the true